Adverb clauses. An adverb clause is a kind of dependent clause that begins with a subordinator and modifies an independent clause. It has a subject and a verb, but it cannot stand alone. Let's look at an example. What is the adverb clause in this sentence? In this sentence, the adverb clause is because they have larger populations. We know this is the adverb clause because it begins with the subordinator, because. Note how an adverb clause needs to be attached to a main clause or independent clause, which has its own subject and verb. Without the independent clause, this adverb clause would be an incomplete sentence because it needs more information to express a complete idea. An adverb clause can start a sentence. When the adverb clause comes before the independent clause, we separate the two clauses with a comma. An adverb clause can also come after the independent clause. In this case, we do not separate the two clauses with a comma. Adverb clauses of reason. Some subordinators are used to introduce reasons. Examples of subordinators are because, since, as, and due to the fact that. Remember that an adverb clause has three main parts: a subordinator, a subject, and a verb. The clause can come either at the beginning or at the end of the sentence. Adverb clauses of concession. Other subordinators are used to show concession, or that an idea is less important than the idea in the main clause. Listen to these two examples. What are the subordinators that show concession?
Many people prefer to drive trucks and SUVs, even though they spend more money on gas. Although there is a lot of oil below the Earth's surface, accessing it can be both dangerous and expensive.
Here, both even though and although serve as subordinators of concession. Again, note that when the adverb clause comes at the beginning of the sentence, a comma appears between the two clauses. Other subordinators used to show concession include despite the fact that and in spite of the fact that. Read the sentences. Complete each sentence with because or although.
Because the amount of traffic in urban areas is growing, there is more air pollution. Although many people drive to work, others prefer to use public transportation. Although sea levels are rising, there are actions we can take to prevent dangerous levels from occurring in the future. Because sea levels are continuing to rise, a number of species are at an increased risk of losing their habitat.
Despite and in spite of. There is a grammatical difference in the way despite and despite the fact that are used in a sentence. Listen to these two examples. Can you identify the difference?
Despite the recent rain, many areas are still in a drought. Despite the fact that it has rained recently, many areas are still in a drought.
Did you figure out the difference? In the first sentence, despite functions as a preposition followed by the noun phrase, the recent rain. We are using despite as part of a prepositional phrase. In the second sentence, despite the fact that functions as a subordinator, which is followed by the subject it and the verb has rained. We are using it as part of an adverb clause. The same grammatical difference exists between how we use in spite of and in spite of the fact that. In spite of functions as a preposition before a noun or noun phrase, whereas in spite of the fact that is a subordinator that is part of an adverb clause of concession. Now let's practice. Read each sentence. Choose despite or despite the fact that to complete each sentence. look at the grammar of the sentence to help you decide.
Despite the fact that the public supported the new bike paths, the government voted to delay their construction until next year. Despite the increasing number of animals at risk of extinction, the giant panda has recently been taken off the endangered species list. Despite the fact that researchers have provided evidence for global warming, there are still many people who question its validity.